You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur. Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz. And I have a special message before I introduce today's special guest. The Wedding Biz has been my passion project for over 3 years, and I've been so driven to support this industry any way I can and to help your growth in it by bringing you insights from our industry leaders. However, it does come at a financial cost to me. So to keep from charging a membership fee, the best way for me to keep maximizing the potential of the show and continue bringing you this great content is to ask you to become a patron. Patreon.com is a community-driven website where people can support creatives in delivering great content. And starting for as little as $6 a month, which is 75 cents an episode, you can now lend support not only to help you stay engaged with our industry thought leaders, but also to expand on the kinds of content the Wedding Biz delivers. And of course, you could contribute more. So please go to theweddingbiz.com and you will see a button, a navigation button, becoming a patron. Again, theweddingbiz.com. And you can sign up there. There's also a link in the show notes too. And not only will you be supporting the show, but you'll also be securing access to solid, exclusive future content. So thank you. So last week on Monday, we had a conversation with David Tutera talking about how he's been handling his business during COVID and how he's reinventing himself. And on Wednesday, we had a conversation with Carrie Goldberg, the travel and weddings director of Harper's Bazaar, to check in with her. So those are both two really cool interviews. I really recommend you check them out. And now I want to announce today's guest, and that is JoAnn Gregoli of Elegant Occasions. Modern Bride magazine included her as one of their Trendsetters of the Year, and she was also recently recognized as one of the top 25 most influential wedding planners in the world. This is a wide-ranging conversation, including talking about how she educated herself to be able to speak the language of her vendor team, how she approaches destination weddings outside of where she lives, and there's also a great portion on how she approaches marketing for her services, which is really interesting, as well as how she has not necessarily reinvented herself, but rather reprioritized herself during COVID. So enjoy my conversation with JoAnn Gregoli. JoAnn, it is so much fun to have you on the Wedding Biz. Thanks for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So it's interesting. There's so much I want to get into with you. There's so much. But to start with, I often like to ask people about when they were growing up in terms of, what they feel may have shaped them in terms of who they are today personally and in their career. Is there anything in particular back when you were a child growing up that you feel really impacted, who you are today with your business and personally?
Ironically, there is a story behind this. I reconnected with my sixth grade teacher recently on Facebook. And back in the sixth grade, we were in this concept called open classroom concept. And I was in charge, this is sixth grade, and she reminded me of this. I was in charge of hosting all of these fashion shows for sixth graders. I was in charge of showers and birthdays. I became this party planner in the sixth grade. And she says, "You hosted my wedding shower for all the kids in the class."
What?
Yeah. And I said, "Oh my God, you remember that?" She goes, "You took charge in sixth grade and you're like, oh, she's getting married. We're going to throw her a shower." She goes, "And then you threw these spring shows, fashion shows, where you had all the kids we had all these dresses for free, come in. I would go to the store, literally ride my bike to a store in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And I would go and say, listen, we're doing a fashion show. Would you donate these dresses for us to try on?"
Oh my gosh.
So that and she laughed and she goes, "I can't believe what you've become based upon what you were back in sixth grade." So yeah, I guess I kind of always had this bug in me as far as planning was concerned, even in the sixth grade, which is hysterical to look back on that and look back at her notes and letters she sent me of gratitude. And we reconnected. Yeah. We reconnected in Paris, ironically, a few years ago. It was really funny.
But even, JoAnn, even for you to think at that age, because we're talking, 11, 12 years old, to even think of going around to stores or to these people and saying, will you donate them for the show? Even to think of that, it's like, where does that come from?
I don't know if it was chutzpah or just sheer stupidity. If I ask, maybe they'll say yes. But then it got a little more intense when I got older. I was married and I would go on vacation, with the family and with my ex-husband at the time. And we would go on vacation and I was obsessed, this is no joke, with weddings. And so I'd be at, say, a Sandals property or any property. And I'm like, oh, there's a 2:00 wedding. There's a 3:00 wedding. I go to every wedding.
Come on. You're kidding.
Every wedding. I wouldn't worry about the food buffets. I'd worry about what time the wedding was going to take place. And this is before I was in the industry. So this was like, maybe I was like 20 years old, maybe 21. I was married young.
Yeah.
And I would go to all these weddings. So I became secretly obsessed with love. Like I love to see people in love and I love to see ceremonies. So it was like, my ex-husband would be like, JoAnn, you're crazy. Like you'd be like, oh, today's a wedding at 3, 4, and 5. And I'd go to every one of them and watch.
That's so funny. But but what's interesting to me is that from what I understand, when you went to college, you got a degree in public relations and you joined a PR firm. You did not go into events right away.
Well, in the PR world, you do events, right? Because PR and publicity marketing is events. So I was in events. So in an ironic way, one of my biggest events was I was working for a public relations agency and we were in charge of something called the building of the New Jersey Science Center, which is huge in New Jersey. And we would host events all the time for fundraising events to get this thing up and running because it was this huge science center was something that was privately funded. It wasn't done by the state of New Jersey. So I had a boss, though, that always said to me, and this kind of resonated, I worked with him for a really long time. He would say to me, you can ask for whatever you want. The worst people can do is say no. And that stuck with me forever. Like, you can always ask people for something, right? Will you hire me? Will you give me this? That's, for this benefit and this cause. And the worst they could do is tell you no.
That's right.
So that kind of stuck with me and I, translated to today, I guess, meaning, I just kind of just always persevere. And the worst people can tell me is, nope, we won't hire you, or nope, we don't need you, or whatever.
Well, is it true that the first wedding you did was for Rupert Murdoch's daughter in Beverly Hills? Is that right? Do I have that right?
That was my first celebrity wedding. That wasn't the first wedding I did. My first wedding was a very small wedding, locally. I was a local Jersey girl by heart.
Yeah.
And my whole dream was to really be a mother. I had a career, but that was not my dream. My dream was to always be a mom. So 6 children later.
Right. I was waiting. I was either going to say it or wait for you to say it.
6 children later.
Yeah, you're a professional mother, that's for sure.
That dream became a reality. And but then my career took off. So what happened was I was hired by Rupert Murdoch to do his daughter's wedding in Beverly Hills. And that was my first trajectory into the destination world, actually, and to the world of celebrity. So that wedding was surreal.
Do you remember details? Well, of course you do. Can you share them? I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it was so surreal because it was the first time in my life I felt like it was an out-of-body experience. Like I didn't feel like I was really there. It was very strange because we had a lot of Secret Service. We had President Reagan there, President Bush there. I met President Reagan. I met President Bush. And I remember Ronald Reagan coming up to me. He's a very tall man. And he'd say, "Hi, I'm Ronnie." And I'm looking up at him because I'm small. And I'm like, "Yes, Mr. President, I know who you are." But I felt like I didn't feel like I was really there. Like it was really weird because it was such an intimate wedding.
Yeah.
But really big people. Like you're in this room with people that you know. You know their faces. And you're like, wow, that is a very strange scenario. But it was my first, I should say, destination celebrity wedding that kind of put me on the map. And then people realized that I wasn't just a local Jersey girl just doing a thing or local mom,
Yeah. Well, how many years into having your own business did that happen?
It was probably about 5 years in, I'd say. 5 years in, I had met somebody who worked for his News Corps. And he's like, "Listen, I don't know how to plan a wedding. We need you. Can you come in and help us do this wedding in Beverly Hills?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Again, you never, I was one of those people that never said no. Like my first bar mitzvah, it was like, I was either you're going to either sink or you're going to swim. But a rabbi hired me to do a bar mitzvah. I had never done a bar mitzvah, right? Didn't even know what a bar mitzvah was.
And you're doing it for a rabbi's family, you're saying?
So I'm like, oh my God, either I am going to just like go down in flames or I'm just going to shine bright like a star. So I just did my research. I'm like, okay, let me just really delve into, the faith and figure out what it's all about. And I pulled it off.
And coming back to the whole idea of destination weddings, I mean, weren't you one of the first to do what we now call a destination wedding, where it's outside of your local area? That was unusual at the time, wasn't it?
It was very unusual. Yeah, they call me, I guess I'm the godmother of destination weddings. I think I was one of the first to actually foray into that. But my background is my mother is a travel agent or was a travel agent. So I traveled my whole life. So destinations to me were not foreign. And my mother used to run Rufino wine tours in Italy, and she had a whole thing. So me to the world of travel to me was natural. Like get on a plane, get a passport, go do an event. I did it as a kid with her. So it wasn't a big deal. So it wasn't foreign to me at all. I just knew that you had to have the right people on the ground to be able to pull it off.
But let's stop right there. Like back then, I imagine it was either early days or before the, internet where we can get so much information, just right at our fingertips and all the organizations where we meet people. It was before that. How did you go about putting together a team, or did you bring people from where you lived to do this?
Well, I started out with Italy because that was home to me, right? So Italy was a natural to me because I have family there and I had my connections there, right? Uh-huh. So I knew who the flower people were. I knew bands. I knew all that. Photography wise, I always had a rule where I traveled with the photography team. I still do actually, because those are the people that if you don't have the visual, then you have nothing, right? You don't have it. So those are the people that I kind of follow. But I also wrote the book For the Knots Guide to Destination Wedding with Anna. So that was something that I did naturally. And that destination book kind of put me on the map for the first destination thing. But I really did my research. And yes, you're right. There was no internet. You had to rely on tourism departments. You had to rely on brochures. There was no internet to look at a property.
Yeah, right.
But I knew fam trips existed because in the travel world, that's what they relied upon. That's what they all relied upon, travel agents. Travel agents are the ones where my mom would travel the world on fam trips. So I knew that was what worked, right? That you had to know. So Italy, I knew like the back of my hand. So that was simple. And then it was like, okay, now I need to go and visit, literally just go fly and visit Spain or visit Morocco or visit, Greece, because you cannot be a planner doing destination weddings and book a place sight unseen. It's too risky. You cost yourself your reputation if you do that.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to step back for a minute, and have you walk me through what your general process is. I'd love to hear about that, and it would be interesting, JoAnn, to hear with clients for a local event and also for a destination, because I'm sure it's pretty different. Could you start with local? What is your general way of doing things with the clients?
Well, locally, you have to source your space and see it and visit it, and then source your vendors locally, right? So you have to have a network of vendors because you're only as good as the team that's supporting you from behind, right? You're no good if there's not a great team behind you. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to find the vendors you trust and pull off the product, and they're going to pull off the event the way you wish to see it pulled off. So you vet them and you meet them. And how I did it was back in the day, I became well-versed in all the areas. So I would take a floral design class. I would take a class in photography and videography. So I'd be able to speak their language.
Wow.
The secret is you have to speak the language of the people you're dealing with, right? Uh-huh. You can't go in there and talk about flowers if you don't know anything about flowers. You can't go in there and talk anything about photography unless you know what you're talking about. So I became well-versed in every area so that, I would be able to speak their language and be able to be the advocate for my clients. That's the secret.
What a great idea.
Yeah, you can't just walk into something and say you're the expert. How can you be an expert if you don't know what it is that you're selling? So that is, how I did it. And then that's local. Destination, you just have to go there on the ground, boots on the ground. You can't even trust the internet, to be honest with you, because they're only going to show you the best of the best, right? Their pictures. You don't know if there's a power plant behind the ceremony area unless you go see it. Because visually, they're not going to show you that, right? Visually, they're going to show you the corner that looks the best in the shot. But if you walk there and you go, oh, wow, there's a power plant right in the backdrop, or there's a, whatever is ugly, you need to know. So you really have to visit the places before you can even consider selling a property or selling a destination.
And what is your process with the client? How does that go for you?
Well, the client, first we sit down and we determine exactly, there's a questionnaire they fill out, where their head is at and what they're trying to achieve. And then you kind of go through the process of, okay, where, if it's a destination wedding, where is it going to be? What is near and dear to their heart? And then you kind of hone in on what's going to work for them. And there's a variety of areas you're looking at. You're looking at what's the accessibility, what's the affordability, and what is the airlift? How is the airlift achieved? So if you're going to an island, is it a direct flight? Is it multiple flights? Because you're trying to be as thoughtful to your guests as you possibly can without driving them crazy with long distances and long travel. So you have to be very thoughtful in your process.
Yeah. And what about in terms of events that you do that are not weddings? Do you do any corporate incentive programs, anything like that as well?
We do. We do a lot of corporate fundraisers. Corporate incentives are a little bit easier because you don't have the stress of the bride. So it's not as emotional, I guess.
But then you've got the multiple days to deal with, right? And opening general sessions.
But weddings are multiple days too, right?
Yeah. Okay. For destination, that's right.
So they're multiple days. So it's the same. It's the same. You just have to know. And again, if you're doing a corporate event, you have to know that area as well, right? You just have to know, what does the venue have? What are the parameters being set forth? How many breakout rooms do you need? It's the same thing. It's just in a different capacity.
But I'm imagining your experience in public relations must help you with the corporate, right? To understand the branding message, the mission statement, why are they having the meeting? I imagine that background must be helpful.
Very. I mean, my PR background became, because I was a corporate PR, right? So I know the mindset of the corporate world because that's where I came from. Mm-hmm. So it was a natural progression. I fell into the wedding destination market a little more heavily only because my passion. You have to be passionate to be successful. And I tell that to my children all the time. Find your career choice and be passionate and you'll succeed. If you're not passionate about what you do, you're never going to succeed at anything in life.
What about also the business aspect? I mean, I like to talk a lot on the show about, that delicate balance between art and the business. And, I've had people say, look, no matter how creative you are, no matter how brilliant you might be with the creative aspect, if you don't have your business together, you're not going to be successful. How did you put together, in a little bit, we'll talk about now during the pandemic, how you're dealing with it. But prior to the pandemic, what is your team like? How did you approach putting together that part of your career as the business aspect?
Well, you had to have a team that was able to support me. I'm a really hands-on planner. We don't do multiple, weddings on a weekend. I choose not to do that. That's not the way I ran my business. So it's really, we just do one wedding a weekend.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So we keep it very close-knit and small as far as that's concerned. I have, my support team, that's secretarial support. I have my design team, that's on brand. And then I have my marketing team. So there's a bunch of people that I deal with that are part of my team, but I have to trust them explicitly. But I'm also involved in every aspect of it. And I think that is what made me last this long. I just didn't hire a ton of people and say, hey, use your money frivolously. I kind of really kept it very close knit to the vest to be able to be successful and be able to support all my family. Because I've supported my family my whole career by myself.
Wow. Yeah. You've been a single mother for a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. And don't you also have an associate in Rome and also one in Morocco and I think LA too?
Well, Morocco is brand new. He's my partner in Marrakesh. So before this pandemic hit, we were ready to launch. Oh. So that kind of came on a standstill. But Rome is near and dear, so I have somebody in Rome, and then I have somebody in LA. So it's multifaceted, so that we're covering all aspects of the markets that I hit the most.
What percentage of your business is outside of where you live?
Over 75%.
Wow. So you're really on the road quite a bit.
Like this pandemic has shook me to the core. My passport now has like mothballs, it's sad. It's sad when I was on a weekly basis knowing my TSA agents, and now I know.
Right.
That's really sad. And now my postal service knows me really well.
Well, I want to come back to the pandemic in a little bit, for sure, because I know you also started this grassroots effort to make masks, and I want to come back to that in a second. Coming back, before the pandemic hit and everything, can you tell me something about your pricing philosophy? That is a sensitive topic in this industry, as you know. Are you working on percentage or flat fee, design fee? How do you do it?
It's a flat fee based on a percentage. So you just look at their budget and then you know your percentage and then you just flat fee it. That's how I do it.
And then obviously if there's some enormous change, it's going to go upward as well.
Well, yeah, if their budget goes up exponentially or they're adding things to it, then it goes up as well. So, but it's pretty basic. I don't try to make it convoluted to them. You know what I mean? People want a direct answer price point, right? People don't want a sliding scale. People don't want an unknown. Like if you charge just a full percentage, that is kind of risky because the client feels if you're pushing them up, right? You're pushing their price points up and they don't trust you. You have to gain their trust. And if you give them a flat fee, but my flat fee, I base it on a percentage, but it's a flat fee because it's not sliding. You know their budget. And then, I mean, there are times where I'm caught where they spent a lot more than I thought and wasn't in my contract. I'm like, ugh. But at that point, it's a learning curve, right? You're like, oh, okay, I learned the hard way. But you can't go back to somebody and say, hey, just because you spent more money. It's like with the music. You can't go back and say, hey, you got more money, so we're going to charge you more. Can't do that.
Right, of course.
That would not sit well with anybody. So you have to be very honest about that and be very forthcoming. And I think most people in this world want a hard number.
Yeah, I believe so too. I want to be sure you know about another great show on the Wedding Biz Network, The Business of Being Creative, with host Sean Lowe. You've often heard Sean on my Next Level episodes. Well, now he's taking the creative business advice he's shared with accomplished notables such as Preston Bailey, Vincente Wolf, Nate Berkus, Style Me Pretty, and Sylvia Weinstock, and more, and offering it to you on his new show. There are already a few episodes for you to catch up on where he discusses the power of being niched, pricing strategies, metrics of success, and so much more. So in short, you're going to gain a ton of value and action items from Sean's show, and you'll have the opportunity to talk back by recording messages of feedback from right there in the show notes. So if you are a creative who is turning your craft into a business or want to take it further, head to theweddingbiznetwork.com and take a listen to The Business of Being Creative by Sean Lowe. Again, that's theweddingbiznetwork.com. Since both you and I started in the business, I mean, social media has cropped up and become such an essential part of our businesses now. And I'm curious, again, especially with your PR background and your time in the business, how do you approach social media? What is your strategy for dealing with that?
Well, social media, I had to learn it, but because I had children, they kind of put me right into the forefront.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I really learned from my children. My daughter worked with me for many years until she moved to California. But she was the one that started my social media accounts and started me on that social media platform, which coming from a PR background where I went to school, everything has changed. What you've known is no longer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
what you know is no longer what it used to be. So you really have to kind of figure it out and figure it out as you go along. Social media, I have people though I hire that do my social media accounts because I just don't have time.
Right.
And we were just executing a huge social media platform before COVID hit. And it was like, so they're on a pause button for now. But
what do you mean by that? What do you mean by a social media platform that's different?
Well, it's different because you're not using magazines, which used to be the norm. You're not, right? That used to be how you would advertise, right? Magazines, any kind of articles. I still keep the articles going because that keeps your name, current out there. Yeah. So I'm always writing, always. I get a lot of publicity. So I do know you need to keep your name. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah,
you have to stay current. Even if you're not working as much, still keep your name out there, all across all social media channels and platforms. You have to use every element of it.
Well, and also in terms of staying relevant too, right? I've heard you speak. I don't remember where you had said something about you have to constantly reinvent yourself and stay current. How do you view that? That's something, because I'm like you. I've been in this business for decades, and it's just endless having to reinvent myself. How do you approach that?
You have to go to conferences. You have to become educated. You have to learn every day. You can't ever say to yourself, if you become complacent and say, hey, I know it all. You're never going to know it all. If you know it all, then you're dead, right? You might just hang it up. You must learn constantly from the younger group, and you must watch, and you must go to conferences and learn and really get engrossed in what's happening. If you think that you are the expert in everything, you're never going to succeed. You always have to be on the learning end of things in life.
Are there any particular things that you've done to that has really been a big change with your business, how you do things in order to stay more relevant?
I think keeping younger people on part of your team is big part of it. You have to
That's a
keep
good
youth.
one. Yeah.
They know. They know. I mean, because I have 6 children, I have all millennials to Gen Z all covered, right? I have the bases covered as far as what the
Okay.
parents. So
Yeah.
I watch and ask them a lot. I mean, I have that ability to call my children and say, hey guys, what do you think of this? And they're going to give me their honest opinion. So you have to know each generational mode and how they shop and perform. I speak a lot about that on conferences where I'm speaking all over the world about the generational differences and what they're looking for and how do you market to them. You don't market to baby boomers the way you market to millennials, the way you market to Gen Z. They're all different. They're all different. And you have to market to them all different. If you're not aware of that and you're just like still going to the baby boomer, the parents' generation, forget about it.
Yeah, you're gone. That's right. Do you mind giving a few of the real big points of this kind of a presentation and how to market yourself? I mean, just some of the bigger ones that stick out to you.
Okay, so baby boomers are the parents of the generation and they're more of the hotel people, right? They go to the hotels, they want room service. Millennials are more of those Airbnb people. They want to engross themselves in experiences. They don't care about getting room service.
Right. Interesting. Right.
They don't care about
I
it.
haven't thought about it that way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, if you look at how they shop and, coffee. I mean, I spoke recently and it was so funny because one of the people there was like, how is this woman speaking about the millennial and Gen Z? And look, she's a baby boomer. And after I spoke, some people come to me and goes, oh my God. I'm like, well, they're my kids. So I monitor what my kids do. So like, for instance, we the baby boomers will love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Okay. The Gen Z people and the millennial people will go to those blue bottle coffees. They want the different. They want the boutique. They want to know that the business is philanthropic and they want to know where their food is sourced. So you have to look at their mindset and pay attention to that mindset. So when you market to that mindset, you're aware of how they're perceiving you. If you're just like, oh, I have the experience, they don't care. They don't care. That's not a generation that cares. But if you say, I'm philanthropic and I'm giving back, that's what they care about. Gen Z especially are movers and shakers. Gen Z are those kids when Parkland shooting took place. Those are the kids that put together that gun rally against the White House.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Those were kids.
That was really surprising.
But that's Gen Z. Okay. They're activists. Okay. Millennials, kind of. Gen Z are the activists. Greta, the one who talks about global warming.
Oh, love her. Yep.
She's a Gen Z. That's the generation. So you have to know what each generation thinks and how they think to market to them, because that's your next client, right? Those are our next clients. The baby boomers are kind of gone, right? Because parents aren't paying for weddings. Millennials are paying for weddings.
That's right. It's really shifted. Yeah.
It's shifted. So you have to know the shifts and you have to make your adapt your way and your marketing. If you don't go to conferences where they're talking about Gen Z and the millennials, that should be the number one thing that all business people should be looking at is how are the next generations buying and purchasing? Because they're the ones with the buying power.
Yeah. Well, getting now into the pandemic where we are today, I mean, I know it's obvious, but I'd like to hear from you. How has it affected your business? How are you dealing with it, JoAnn? I mean, personally, business-wise, like how are you doing it?
Well, I mean, obviously we lost everything. I mean, everything is gone. All the business went away for next year. So yeah, it's a little unnerving. It's scary, but I don't want to use the word pivot. I kind of refocused my priorities. What happened was my daughter was on the front lines in the Hamptons in the hospital, and she was in the ER, and she goes, Mom, we don't have any PPE. We have no face masks. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, we're only allocating them to the doctors, not the nurses or physician assistants.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Oof. And I became enraged, and I'm like, okay, I'll fix this. Again, my mind as a mom is like, I need to protect my kid. So I made a few masks and I sent them to her. And I realized very quickly that this mask situation was far graver than we thought. So I reached out to local moms groups and I said, anybody here know how to sew? And all of a sudden, within 24 hours, I had 50 women like, I can sew. I'm like, great.
Wow.
Okay, now I'm like, what do I do with this? I'm like, okay. So I started just buying. Again, I had no work coming in, no zero income. I started getting fabric and sending it to these women. And we had pickup points because I couldn't meet these women because we were social distancing. So I had established depots at police departments and libraries for people to stop in and pick up what they needed to sew. And we started making masks. And then I had my brides respond. One local bride was in a local area. She responded. She has 250 women sewing in her area. Another bride has 50 in her area. So quickly we went from 50 people to well over 500 people sewing around the clock. We've produced to date about 50,000 masks.
Oh my God, JoAnn, 50,000.
50,000 masks. We're shipping all around the country right now because you have hotspots in, Florida and Texas and California. And we also started helping people in shelters. We realized that there was an area that didn't have any protection, battered women's shelters, homeless shelters, and we started making masks for those people. So we really went from this grassroots effort. Good Morning America featured us.
That's right. I heard about that. And also Fox Inside Edition too, right?
Fox, all of them. Yeah, Fox, CBS, ABC, NBC, all the locals. Even DC Fox covered us. So they realized that we were just moms making a difference. And for me, it was just a mom trying to protect her child.
Yeah.
And it turned into a passion project that it's still going strong. If you saw what my dining room table looked like, you'd be hysterical. There's masks from one end to the other, ready to be shipped out. Boxes. And I alluded to the fact that the TSA agents used to know me at Newark Airport.
Right.
Well, now my local postal service knows me personally because I'm there every day shipping.
Jeez. Wow.
Every single day. And so we have a GoFundMe page set up to help defer these costs.
Yeah. What is that? So people can find that.
The GoFundMe, it would be sewingangels.org.
Okay.
And then the GoFundMe will be listed on there. The GoFundMe is Frontline Sewing Angels. And that's helping us defer the cost of all the shipping because the shipping is costing me about $100 a day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I have zero income.
Right.
But to be honest with you, it was the first time in my career that I felt like this is where I'm meant to be. I've never felt so useful. And I know my brides, I feel useful to them. This is different. When I'm at the battered women's shelters delivering food and delivering these masks to these women who are crying, they have no place to live. You realize that we are way more blessed than most people. And if you have a roof over your head and you have food to eat, you've got it all. Nothing else really matters. The work will come. The work will come.
And then, like you say, I mean, you're not doing it because of this, but then again, the brides, the younger brides who are also involved in this kind of a thing are going to have a different appreciation for you, and again, that wasn't why you did it, obviously.
Not at all. I mean, maybe, I don't, if it does, great. If not, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because I did a huge effort like this when 9/11 hit. 9/11 hit and I lost clients and friends. And I realized that there were so many brides that did not have a venue anymore because we lost Windows of the World.
Right. Yeah.
So I reached out to the Knot brides, Modern Bride at the time, and we put word out that if you send me your wedding contracts for Windows, we will give you a wedding at any venue in New York. We'll match it. And
oh my gosh.
I think we helped 500 brides. I was invited to more weddings than I knew what to do with.
Yeah.
But we helped displaced brides, over 500 of them. And these brides were going Windows in the World. We were giving them weddings at the Waldorf, the Plaza, the Pierre, the St. Regis. There was not one venue that turned us down. And so I have it in my heart. It's just one of those things where when something happens, I just feel as if I can't sit back ever. I said to somebody I was talking to, a Party Slate interview, I said, instead of sitting back during this pandemic, planners and people in this industry, give back. Find a way. Find something to help somebody less fortunate than you, and you will feel so much better about yourself that you will get it back tenfold.
Yeah, I love that. And again, to feel, I mean, I also feel like we are all so raw emotionally now, from the pandemic with the fear, just the unknown, all of it, that in order to feel more grounded, I think what you're doing, I would imagine, is really helpful in that sense.
I can't even describe to you that I sleep very peacefully at night. I don't worry. Because it'll come. It'll come. This is just a blip in the scope of life, right? This is a small snippet of what's happening, this pandemic. But I think it's forcing everyone to stop, slow down, appreciate what you have, and people should really help the people that can't help themselves. I think that should be everyone's mindset. I think we'll be better off for it because there's so much hatred in this country and there's so much hatred that if you can just spin a positive light on this, you'll feel a lot better and you'll survive this. We will survive it. We're going to take a beating. Yes. We're definitely going to come out bruised, a little bit black and blue. There's no two ways about it. We are. It's inevitable, but you can also come out as a better person, by just being compassionate and giving back a little bit.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about that. And in the meantime, I mean, are you having regular conversations with clients even though it's been put off to next year? How are you dealing with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, this was the busiest year on record coming up.
Yeah, right.
But all my clients are still there. Nobody left me. We're moving wedding dates. I'm still in touch with my clients. Stay in touch with them. A lot of my clients actually stepped up to the plate and been donating and helping my cause because they see what I'm doing. So a lot of my clients are checking in with me like, Jo, are you okay? What are you doing? Can we do anything for you? So yeah, my clients are still there. I've gotten new clients because of this. I've actually gotten new clients because of this, because corporate people are seeing what I'm doing and how I was able to put a grassroots efforts like this and raise right now over $36,000 and 50,000 masks.
Yeah.
That we're seeing that I'm somebody that can get things done.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. Well, and listen, you're getting so many things done. You have had such an incredible career, JoAnn. I mean, I've known about you for a long time. What is left for you to accomplish? Like, what do you think about, like, when the pandemic's over? What are you looking forward to?
Travel.
Yeah, getting back on. Yeah.
I love to travel. What's left for me? That's a really good question.
I mean, have you thought about an exit strategy, for instance, at this point at all? Do you have any thoughts about that, or you're still in that mode of just going strong with the event business?
Well, I still have kids in college, so I can't stop. I still have three kids in college.
Jeez, I'm so sorry.
I think, to be honest with you, I found so much love in philanthropic work that I think I want to do more fundraising. I think I want to, kind of focus a little bit on the fundraising aspect of it because I enjoy it so very much. The letters that we've gotten from all of the shelters, and I can't even tell you what the letters we've gotten. I mean, in my hometown, I was a working mom, so nobody really knew me. All right. I was more involved in my career. My kids were just going to school. And I remember I had 6 kids go through one school system. But they know me more now than ever before because of this, because of this drive that I've been doing and still going. I haven't stopped. And I think Good Morning America, Robin Roberts asked me, when will you stop this? I said, when the pandemic is over, that's when we'll stop sewing.
Yes. Right. Wow.
And we have not stopped in 17 weeks, I think, at least.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I want to find a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? I think I want to find a little more solace in the fundraising efforts of it and help those less fortunate. I think I found definitely a passion for it, even though my brides still, I still love my brides, but I think I want to shift my focus a little bit and do a little more to help those less fortunate, like the battered women's shelters. I find that really near and dear to my heart because I met some of those women and it's just heartbreaking.
Well, JoAnn, you are an absolute inspiration. I've really enjoyed this. I thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored that I'm part of the series because your series is so enlightening and so inspiring for many of us.
Thanks for saying that. Thank you for listening to my conversation with JoAnn Gregoli. Be sure to check out her website, which is elegantoccasions.joanngregoli.com. And her social media handles on Instagram is JoAnn Gregoli. On Facebook, it's Elegant Occasions Inc. You can get all of this in the show notes at theweddingbiz.com. And don't forget to listen to our follow-on segment that comes out every Wednesday called The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host, and together we tease out some of the highlights of the interview and help give you advice to bring your own business to the next level. And this week's guest co-host is going to be Robert Sherman, the owner of Washington Talent and also my business partner for Kushner Entertainment. So we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.